Hi everybody. See you all. My name is John Houghton. I'm the president of the Historical Society this year, and I'm happy to welcome you to our third program of the summer. I am obliged to point out that we have three more this summer. In particular, I got this wrong in an email, so I want to be very careful to get it correct. On the 9th of August, not the 9th of June, as I earlier suggested, the 9th of August, we have our annual fundraising program with Dave Bennett, who was here several years ago and was enormously popular, 5 years ago, and enormously popular then. So we'll be back and we'll be in the Culver Region Memorial Building for that. Then the week after that, on Saturday morning, the 16th, we'll have Major Bill Brown again in the Memorial Library Building for a presentation about Culver. We're in the building so that we can use the piano, and I don't suppose it's going to play French horn, but as you know, anything can happen. Then on Saturday, September 20th, we have the Stories in Stone Cemetery Walk, presided over by James Beckham Smith, who's also our administrator, and he's there in the back, so thank James. I also should draw your attention to the fact that we are still looking for members, and should you choose to take out a membership even today, you get a 12-month subscription to the Citizen along with it, not just for the remainder of the year. So James has the forms on paper. If you're up to date, you can get it on the QR code on the screen, but we're always happy to accept memberships and payment in virtually any form you can think of. I always say Micronesian trade goods, but you know, we'll take whatever you've got, and we're happy to have more members. With that being said, we have two speakers today. One of them will say more about himself as we go along, so I'll simply point out that it's the owner of College Avenue, the Lion of Liberty Hill, and he'll have more to say about himself. The other is my friend and cousin and fellow director of this organization, Jeff Kenny, who I think has spoken more about any other human being. Jeff is a former editor of The Citizen. He's a frequent contributor, I guess monthly contributor to the Race magazine. There's a monthly column. He is a former director of the Food and Preservation Council. You can keep going. He knows everything that is to be known about Culver, and certainly about our subject on drama and in Culver. Now we'll let him take over there.
I am disappointed that John didn't give me a cool alliterative name like the Idiot of 18th Road or something. But so speaking of, as you know, I think we're all familiar with the topic of the program, Drama by the Lake. And at first, without the subtitle, you might there's so much drama by the lake, right? But we need theater, in this case, formal drama. So of course, really, theatrical things are just, I mean, human beings have been doing them for forever. So when you speak of the sort of by the way, I'm going to kind of breeze through this a little bit because I really want to make sure we have time for Dan, who we really want to hear, and I really want to hear. So not that you don't want to hear any of this because there's really good stuff in here, but I'm moving through. But in the pre-electrical era, you know, theater was just kind of the thing humans did, of course, for entertainment and education. This is a page from the 1905 Maxinkuckee Art Annual. This is a publication of the Maxinkuckee Assembly Chautauqua on the south end of Culver. I have a whole talk on Chautauquas, and I think it's on YouTube and all that. But the Chautauqua movement was, you know, it's rooted in Christian. It was a Methodist movement in New York. But I always sort of tell students or in talks like this, it was edutainment, because it wasn't just Christian preaching. There might be science demonstrations and singing and things like these. You know, the oratorio, the Passion Week in Jerusalem. I think they did Esther, Queen Esther. So these are biblical plays, and as you see, they're quite elaborate. This, by the way, is Doc Wiseman, who is exactly the image we all think of when we hear the name Pontius Pilate, with that great mustache. But that's what he's playing. And so this one, you know, this is done for the Chautauqua, which is really a pretty big deal. The railroad ran all over the country. You could get to the Maxinkuckee Chautauqua, and thousands of people came here every weekend from 1899 to 1907. So I bring that up, one, because of its own self, but also just to kind of illustrate that before the days of any kind of electronic entertainment, whether it's radio or movies or of course later the internet, you know, I'm sure people were performing little plays on the lake and obviously probably going back to day one in our schools. So, you know, going back to the early days of Culver Military Academy, and of course these are cadets having to play the female roles because there weren't girls. And you know, here's a junior class play from Culver High School. So, you know, theater obviously has been part of our schools, public and private. I would be remiss not to mention a few kind of, you know, sort of towering figures related to theater in this area at really kind of a national level. Well, this is Charles Mather on the left. He's the English department chair, studied at Harvard and Stanford, served at Culver Military Academy from 1921 to 57. Among his students is Ernest Gann, who writes a number of novels about aviation, is a movie producer and all that. Edmund North, movie writer. Play producer H. Oliver Ray, and a couple others that we're going to meet in just a moment. He directed 99 student productions, outdoor pageants at Culver, author of countless articles, but also textbooks on theater that were national textbooks, and the first ever written history of Culver Military Academy was written by Dr. Mather. So, and also Harvey Ferrari. I think many of us will remember Harvey Ferrari. He served at Culver Academies from 1952 through 87. He was the director of theater, playwright in residence, chairman of the fine arts department, tennis coach, member of the National Book Critics Circle, and he wrote and published a number of one-act plays, and retired in 1987. You also might remember he had this sort of curmudgeon-y column in the Culver Citizen that he, you know, I think was designed to make everybody mad or he was, you know, quite a character. So hopefully the audio will play on this next clip. It'll make sense, I think.
I'm Chris Tucker, and I'm an actor.
At the Culver Military Academy, I need an extra hour to graduate, and my friend Perry Warren Fisk said, why don't you take dramatics? I thought all those people were a bunch of weirdos. So then he said, there's no homework. I mean, I'll hope we're coming at you.
If you didn't catch the audio, that of course, Hal Holbrook, that's at the Screen Actors Guild Awards. He takes drama at dramatics at Culver Military Academy because there's no homework. And there he is, certainly one of the most renowned and well-known graduates of CMA. He's a 1942 grad. He goes on, you know, certainly best known for Mark Twain Tonight, but he's in a number of highly regarded, including at least one Academy Award nomination for Into the Wild, but he's in a number of highly regarded films. Of course, he passed away a few years ago. We do have his makeup kit at the museum across the street that he used to be Mark Twain while he was on stage here, which I thought, we didn't save it, actually his estate sent it to us, which was pretty neat of them to do. Another, you know, really giant in this field who graduated from the Academy is 1927 grad Joshua Logan. And he's the director of numerous Broadway plays, Hollywood films, including South Pacific. He's won Pulitzer and Tony Awards. And he also, like Hal Holbrook, he came back to Culver many times and interacted with students and performed. And you can read, both of them have autobiographies, by the way, if you're interested, that reference Culver, you know, fairly prominently. So, and I would be remiss again not to just make a quick mention. This is Epley Auditorium on the campus of Culver Academies. It's completed in 1959. And why I mention it, well, this gentleman here is William Martin. He and his wife Kathy are hired right after Epley's completed. And I think even on campus, there's not necessarily an awareness right now of how impactful this was for the arts, but also for our girls programs, because they begin bringing in people like the Chad Mitchell Trio, Joan Baez, the Belafonte singers, but they also have this robust appreciation of theater and dance. And so right away in 1961, they open the summer theater program and they bring girls in. And they're bringing girls in for productions for the very first time on the campus. And this is going to feed into the Summer School for Girls, which opens in 1965, and which really is a precursor to the Culver Girls Academy. So in many ways, theater has a really kind of a grounded, rooted role to play in young women coming to Culver Academies as well. But when we think of theater in the Culver area, to me, I think when we think of long-standing and kind of really embedded theater, one of them, Dan Adams is going to talk about in a moment, and the other one is this. This is, I'm going to quote from Harvey Ferrari himself, actually, who wrote a really great article on the Maxinkuckee Playhouse on the east shore of the lake. He called it one of the best straw hat theaters in the country. He wrote during 3 months of each summer from 1950 to 61, at least 8 quality plays or Broadway musicals were staged by the first Maxinkuckee players, and they did call themselves the Maxinkuckee Players, which is kind of interesting. A group of revolving professional college actors, many of them destined to gain prominence in the world of entertainment. What's even more interesting and unlikely is the location, right? So the Maxinkuckee Playhouse it was actually a girls' summer camp from 1940 to 48, run by a property owner named Winifred Lay. And was on East Shore Lane. It was often described as the Green Barn. And you can see this is a postcard over here, the Maxinkuckee Vacation Club. And so when the players take an interest in 1948 in purchasing this, or at least the founding members, that camp has ended. So in March of 1950, it's announced the Maxinkuckee Players purchased the property. The two lead guys at that point are Paul Rutledge here and Martin Tossi. We'll talk about them in just a moment. But Rutledge is a university professor in Cincinnati. Tossi is his student, and they have a founding board, many of them out of Cincinnati, who had plugged into Culver. And by the way, I should mention Martin Tossi. Well, here he is. He's his connection to Culver is he's a 1948 Culver Military Academy graduate. He's later, after he co-founds the Playhouse, he's going to serve in the Air Force in the Korean War. And after he's done with that, he's going to be involved in Broadway as well. Trying to make it quick. He eventually reaches Hollywood, produces movies and TV shows, and probably the best known of his works is the ABC After School Specials. So if you remember those, that was his work. But he really had quite a role in Broadway and a career in TV and theater and all that. Oh, and this is him up here. One night I got a call from Richard Ford when he was still alive there in East Shore Lane. He said, it's probably 9 o'clock at night, and I was a newspaper editor at the time. He said, I have someone here who'd like to be interviewed. Can you come over right now? So I did. And there was Martin Tossi, and he hadn't been back since he graduated in 1948, and we spent probably 2 or 3 hours just talking about the Playhouse and just his life. And he was a really gracious, very, very kind person, and called me even after the interview, called me up and thanked me for the article. So, neat guy. So they've purchased that property, but I found this interesting. Dan had brought me some wonderful things that someone who had been involved in the Playhouse brought, including these great newspaper articles from Fort Wayne and Indianapolis and other places about the Playhouse. So they actually used the Maxinkuckee Village Schoolhouse there on Queen and 18B as a kind of storage place. Of course, now it's a home, but thankfully, I'm glad it didn't go away. So they had deserted schoolhouses that serves as a scenery workshop. Sets are constructed and transported to the barn. So that was kind of interesting. There you see Rutledge and Tossi up on the left. Let's see. And there were a lot of local supporters, of course. We'll get to more names, but just kind of getting out of the gates. Some of the names: Dorothy Oberlin, Art Hughes, Charles Mather, who we mentioned, Betty Shetterly. So without going into all the details, but you can imagine the work it went into to make a barn. Well, it's sort of a barn, but it was just to turn this into a playhouse. There you go. And so more scenes. There were little cabins adjacent to the playhouse. You can see them paying their laundry up, and as the captain says, if the actors ever forgot to take in their washings, this is the scene which will greet the theater goers en route to the barn. And so they're rehearsing plays. They're living in the little cabins. And they would bring in actors from colleges, mostly in the Cincinnati and Cleveland area. Many moved on after a year or two. One exception was Bob Moak, I think I'm pronouncing that right, who signed on the second summer and endeared himself to Culver audiences for the next 11 years in 98 productions. He often played befuddled old men, so I grow into that role. But he could shift gears and give powerful performances in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Flowering Peach, and equally challenging plays. So this is the Indianapolis Star magazine. This is a picture from, they're all kind of relaxing on the pier there on the east shore of the lake, and just sort of a sampling of some of their productions. There were some local folks involved in the productions as well, including 3 on opening night. Dorothy Oberlin, I won't go into all of this, Mary Bishop, Nancy Todd, and local actress Marge Overmeyer played Amanda in The Glass Menagerie. And she continued her theatrical career with the LaPorte Drama Group. And her co-star in that play, what was his first name? Tom Brubaker, went on to become the founder of PBS Channel 34 in Indiana, or in South Bend area. So, and as Harvey writes, the players were grateful that good neighbors like Marilyn Kelly supplemented their almost strictly hot dog fare with fresh vegetables, solved their car and bus problems by providing the service of her husband Norman, and contributed homegrown boy actors to their cast, including children David and Steve Kelly, and others like Jackie Mall, and Sugar Fell, Don Reed, Tina and Eric Hughes, and Coke Smith Jr. So, you know, it was really a collaborative endeavor, really with kind of Town, Academy, Lake, and then the folks who were, you know, kind of from outside the area. In 1953, the players sent out a ballot all over northern Indiana listing 40 play titles. You could check off what you wanted. Audiences were drawn from at least 19 cities all over northern Indiana, and I would say certainly down to Indianapolis and other areas, because you see write-ups in the Indianapolis papers. And so, in fact, there was a year when the state tourism map came out and the Mexican Playhouse was on the map. So I mean, it really had become kind of a statewide phenomenon. And they took the show actually on the road. They presented that same year in 1953 at Lake Wawasee. And so they did kind of move it around. Details, but so much so that by 1955 there was a need to expand. It was kind of it was tight from the beginning in terms of seating, and so it was badly needed because there were any given summer 10,000 outsiders would come to East Shore Lane, and this isn't even East Shore Drive, it's East Shore Lane. So I don't know how they did it honestly. It must have been a lot of cars. And then they opened a ticket office in South Bend, and show buses ran almost nightly from the city, stopping at a restaurant for dinner before the show and joining the company members for pie and coffee after the performance before getting back on the bus. So you can see why they needed to, they kept the original building but grew, you know, kind of expanded with this, you know, this sort of, well, I'm no architecture person, you see it. The 1958 summer included David Canary, who's going to go on to national fame as Candy in Bonanza, the TV show Bonanza. In the 1980s, he plays a major role in the soap opera All My Children, and he returned to the Mexican Playhouse in 1960 and sang the male lead in Kiss Me Kate. Dick Sinatra, cousin of Frank Sinatra, performed on the stage. Kent Guthrie, an actor and folk singer, and then Hoosier-born Bernie Pollock, who became a famous Hollywood costume designer and worked with his brother Sidney Pollock, who was a producer director of award-winning movies like Out of Africa and Tootsie. So you can see, you know, just kind of the caliber of folks that were coming through. So as successful as it was, and I'm not clear on why, maybe someone knows, in July 26, 1961, Culver Citizen announces bad news, the Maxon Kentucky Playhouse is leaving Culver for Michigan. The transplanted theater moved to the Cherry County Playhouse of Traverse City, but it only lasted a couple of years there. It ended up on the Showboat Majestic docked at the public landing on the banks of the Ohio River, where for 17 years it continued to warn patrons that the curtain was going up. So Rutledge did stay involved in his native Ohio in theater. And if you know, looking up his obituary, he certainly was well known for that in the area. He's going to die in 2010 at the age of 91. You can see him there in his obituary photo. So the original playhouse was torn down, and I'm quoting Harvey Ferrari's article, and the new playhouse and land were eventually sold to Gene Furry and Dwight Wildemuth. According to Jack Campbell, the playhouse was used by his marina as a place to store boats in the winter, and I just like Harvey's quote here. So where actors once trod the boards in the summer, boats boarded there in winter, some of them sitting on the stage, with the only applause coming from blowing wind and falling rain. Later, when the boards had begun to rot, Jack's son David stepped on the stage and found himself without benefit of a trapdoor, one level below. And he also mentions that Alan Becker saw a stranger standing in the middle of the road looking toward the playhouse many years later, of course. And on being questioned, he said that once long ago he had appeared on the playhouse stage as an actor, but now he was a movie technician and was traveling from the making of the basketball movie to Blue Chips. So, you know, the building, that building of course is gone, but, you know, quite a legacy of 11 years of really, renowned theatrical productions, which gives me a good segue to talk about the other Max and Cucky players, who probably most of us are far more familiar with. And so I'll introduce here and let him introduce himself, Dan Adams.
Unlike Jeff, I'm going to use the podium to lay stuff on and also give myself a little support. My name is Dan Adams. I thought I'd introduce myself. Some of you probably don't know me. I moved here in 1972. I was I graduated or did my student teaching from Ball State in the fall of 1971. Got a call from Culver. Called them on a Monday morning. They were interested in me coming up and interviewing for a job, so I came up on the next day, on Tuesday. Interviewed for the job. On Thursday, they called me and told me I had a job, but they wanted me to start on Monday. And so I came up and signed a contract on Friday. They set up an apartment for me, catty corner from the school, which cost me almost $75, including utilities, and didn't even have to drive to school. And moved up on Saturday and started teaching on Monday. I thought I'd probably be here for maybe 6 months, move on, and here I am, still here. And like I told Jeff yesterday, fell in love with it right away. What can't you fall in love with about Culver? So many things that just have happened since I've been here. I was thinking of two things I wanted to mention. I was telling Jeff earlier about Harvey Ferrari, and talking about him. One of my favorite Harvey Ferrari stories was, in his later years, his eyesight was going a little bit bad, but he was still driving. And it was Halloween time, it was the month of October, and we had our scarecrow contest here.
Scarecrow
And
contest.
the story is Harvey, and it was a heavy raining evening, Harvey pulled up to a street corner. There was a lady standing there, standing in the rain. He rolled down the window and asked her if she wanted to ride, and it was one of the scarecrows. The other story was Elaine Epley is here, who's Jean Epley's daughter. And Jean, and I love Jean dearly. I talked with her when I first came here, and I actually worked for Ep also at the liquor store for a few summers. But Jean always said about her acting career that she had gone to the academy and did some female roles when she was in school, and she got to play opposite Hal Holbrook.
Oh, wow.
And the big claim to fame was her role was bigger than his. and actually, I think Elaine found the program for that, and she said, yes, it was bigger than his. Anyway, when I started teaching here, and again, I told Jeff, I said, as a teacher, I was actually on stage every day, 7 periods a day, because as a teacher, you had to entertain, you had to keep their attention, and so I think acting was a kind of a natural thing. I grew up farm kid, switched schools when I was in 6th grade, had gone to a real small school, went to a school that's twice the size, still little, but twice the size. Didn't know anybody, was very shy, very quiet, until I was a junior, actually sophomore, junior in high school. And I got involved in plays. And it made a whole big difference in my life. And that's kind of what I'm going to lead to here in a second. Jeff, you want to start our first one? I came in '72. My first year of 7th graders, I think, were seniors this year. And the high school did a production called Godspell. And it's probably the most impressive high school play I had ever been to. In fact, they put it on 3 times, and I went all 3 times to see it. They had to put in an extra performance because some people hadn't got to see it, so I went all 3 of them. Debbie Bamer was the director of it. We have Kelly Middleton here, Lynch, who is actually one of them up here. Very impressive, but the quality of that play was so impressive to me. And I knew the quality of performers were here. And from there, we did the high school production. Mimi Colt was her name, was the director of the high school production. This was in spring of 1980. And she was trying to put on Finian's Rainbow. And she didn't have enough male parts. And she came to me as a teacher and said, I know you do some singing. Would you consider being in Finian's Rainbow? I just need some males. I don't have enough males. And I said no. And I told her, I said, Mimi, I said, and the reason, that's why I told you about it. I said, I was very shy. I was introverted until I was involved in a play. And if I take this part, and you have to beat the bushes to get those kids out there that maybe that would exactly the kids you need to help. I don't want to do that. I don't want to take that away from the kid. And she listened very, she said, I promise, I will hunt like crazy. Well, a week later, she said, I have really tried. And I said, okay. And she said, will you do it? And I said, yes, for you to have the play, I'll do it. She said, good, I got the perfect part for you. She said, I want you to be the leprechaun. Oh. I said, Mimi, look at me. You want me to be a leprechaun. And she said, yeah, and well, if you, any of you remember Latham Lawson. Latham Lawson was a teacher at the high school. Short guy, wiry little guy, perfect leprechaun. I said, why not Latham? She said, oh, I've got another part for him. But anyway, she talked me into doing it, and that's me over there. I had a leaf pants on. And some of the people, Mike Rakish is played Finian, Paul Warner, Christine Berger, different students up there. But the first performance we did was for the middle school and elementary school kids. We all went for a final dress rehearsal on Friday morning before we opened that night. And so we had a whole auditorium full of kids. And of course, here I am, one of their teachers. And about 20 minutes into the show, and Mimi was quite eccentric. I mean, there was a real tree up there. There was always challenges. I had little pointed ears and all this stuff. But the thing that had to happen was my pants had to go flying in the air and come off of them. And we set that all up. Well, you can imagine how the kids reacted with me standing in my long underwear with the pants going off. But we had so much fun, and that's why I wanted to go into this, and that's why I wanted to start. We had so much fun doing it, and there were several adults, or about, I think I counted 6 or 7 adults in the group. And we had so much fun in doing it that we decided, okay, maybe we could get something going like an adult civic theater, which would give a release for adults in the community to be able to perform. So Jeff, you'll go ahead and switch there. So that spring, and if you look at the upper right-hand corner, we called a meeting, put it out in the paper. We're going to have a meeting looking at setting up a civic theater group in Culver. We had it in Vicki Durth's living room, and we had 9 people show up. So we set up a board of 9 people. That was our first board. And we had 5 teachers. Let me see this thing. Yeah, 5 teachers and 4 young people who happened to all be cousins. But we had no idea what we were doing. Absolutely none. We set up a board. We said, okay, you look into this, you look into this, you look into this. And about 2 weeks later, we met again, and we still didn't know what we were doing, but we decided we'd go ahead. So we did open, and I've got the poster from, I found in my attic, framed it. This is from the original one. Price was $250 and $6 for a family. You bring the whole family for sale. We wanted to have it filled. Opening night, we had a full auditorium. In fact, we had to delay starting it because we had to put some seats up. And it was a thrilling time, and both of our performances were just tremendous. But the backdrop, we painted ourselves. It was so impressive. And we had, like I said, we had no money. That backdrop is actually made of bed sheets sewed together and painted. We stretched it out on the canvas and painted it. I didn't, because it wouldn't have looked that good. We joked that we made some tables for a saloon, and one nail in the bottom, one nail from the top. That's basically what the table was. Bare minimum costumes. We just kind of went through and found a whole bunch of clothes in our attics and did things. But some great people. I don't know if any of you remember Jack Jones. Some of you might remember Jack Jones. He was a wonderful guy. He's back here, older gentleman, second row on the far left. Funny story, he was one of our dress rehearsals. He had stolen a horse in play, and they were taking him off. They were taking him off to be hung, and his grandson was there with his wife, and they were kind of watching. His grandson started crying, screaming, "Don't kill my grandfather!" I got to play Vin Rumson, and it was just a tremendous success, and we had fun. So we moved on from there, and like I said, that was in 1980 when we started. Our fourth year, we decided we could put on something a little bit more powerful, and we put on the play Showroom. We found a lot of problems we had. First of all, we had to build a boat, and we had to build it sturdy enough. It had to be 2 stories. It had to be worked as both inside and outside. It's not easy to do. So we built it actually outside. We built it in Glenn Patton's driveway on Pearl Street, and then moved it in sections to the stage. But why I had this picture, we also ran into, there's other problems that people don't think about that come up. Judy Patton and I, well, it was Judy Shawley at that point, got to play the leads, Magnolia and Gaylord. Music in Showboat, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's pretty hard. It's not easy music. We had, in fact, for the chorus, there's a lot of dancing in it. We had an extra chorus sitting down in front of the stage that sang with it to help support that. I'm not a trained singer at all, but Ann Bigley, and then you probably know Ann Bigley was our music director at that point, and she kept talking about, you need to breathe this, you need to do this, you need to do that, and I thought I was trying. I was walking down the hallway one day, and at that time, maybe some of you remember, there was a commercial on called No More Rice Krispies. I don't know if you remember, a long time ago. Well, it's very operatic. I was singing it, and I heard from behind me Ann say, "That's the voice I want." and Judy and I got to sing a song called Your Love. That, I still love singing that song. I wish I could hit those notes anymore. But we had this because we also found costumes can be a real problem. Because we went, and it wasn't particularly this, but basically like this. We walked off we stayed on it. We were on the second floor of the boat, walked to the stage left area, had to change into wedding clothes in less than a minute. Went from all this to what, you lose any kind of modesty. You know, you really do. But there's so many challenges that come up. You can't do a play with just actors. We've done things like Fiddler on the Roof, we got to do that, that was my favorite, I love playing Debbie. We've been involved with the Lake Fest Parade, did My Fair Lady, Colin Stetson from the Academy, he played Henry Higgins. So it was just wonderful times we had. Go ahead, Jeff. Other problems we have, did Fiddler, we had to make somebody fly. We decided we went Frumacera, which was Golda's grandmother. Anyway, no, that was Laser Wolf's first wife, yeah, and she was a ghost. We wanted her to fly off. So we contacted the fire department and said, we'd like some rigging set up. And see, Golda and I are in bed there, and she came down from above, but no, she came from behind the bed, and then she left. So they came to work on it, and this is Andrea Mallory. I don't know if you know Andrea or Mallory, who's who played that. And Andrea is really so funny. But they came, and how do I want to put this? Andrea is well endowed. And they tried all kinds of different harnesses on her. And I remember the first one was like this. But they had different, and they would pull her up and she would swing. It was scared me to death, but we were laughing for hours. But the thing you don't even think about it, in the upper left-hand corner, or right-hand corner there, we have a scene, that's from Singing in the Rain. We needed rain on stage, so we had to design a gazebo type thing that rained. And we had white rain coming down, it collected at the bottom, it rotated. So challenging things to do as far as construction. As you can see, some of our sets are, lots of permanent sets. We did Anything Goes. This is from Brigadoon, one of our more challenging ones. You're familiar with Brigadoon. Takes place in Scotland, obviously. But there's a bridge you have to go over. So what we designed was a bridge that actually went from the stage out into the audience. We had another small thing out there. The interesting thing about it is we had some real trees. We cut off things to bring it in. And our opening night, one of the persons said to Al Sitzma, who was doing our sound, he said, that was really nice that you had that sound of that tree frog. We had tree frogs. If you'll notice, there's in my lap there, and Anything Goes in the far left side, second one from bottom, you'll see a little dog. I'll bring him up a little bit too. This is, again, a permanent set. This was from My Fair Lady. You see Colin Stetson there in the middle. Andrea Mallory played but again, two-story, very impressive looking set. Actually, my brother designed that set, Dave Adams. Then this is from a play called Crazy for You. And in it, I wanted to put that in because this was actually designed by Brian Lichty, who passed away during COVID, but he did lots of designing of our sets. And you see the car, that's not a drawing, that's a real car. It's not, I shouldn't say real car, a built car. Because in it, the one main character had to be lifted up and standing on it, so we had to put a lift in it. But it was also designed so that all these dancers could come out of it. They all came out of the same car from it. was a real challenge to do, but he pulled it off wonderfully. Again, some of the sets, some of the cast, this is, again, from Singing in the Rain. One of the things we had to do in Singing in the Rain was, if you were familiar with that show at all, we had to have a silent movie in it, because it was going from silent movies to talking movies, and that's all part of it. And we had to do a silent movie, and then we had Jim Moss. Some of you probably remember Jim Moss was our voice for it when we was talking about doing the movie. And Jim was involved in Fiddler and all kinds of stuff. Jim was a wonderful guy. And the only person we ever had to fill in for on our last show, our last show was on a Sunday. It was Brigadoon, and he was the head of one of the clans, and he was mowing his yard, slipped in dog manure, broke his ankle. So he couldn't be in the show. So we had to fill in, and part of the thing, we carried Harry Beaton out in a casket in it. Well, he was one of the ones carrying it, so we had to substitute some people to do it. Well, the one person we substitute hadn't really gone through it. When they stood up and held it in a very somber moment, he was facing the wrong direction. So that, things like that happen that kind of bring the crowd, which you always have. Back up just a second, the upper right-hand corner is from a play we did called, How Does She See the Business Without the Electronic? That's the first play that we did not do at Culver High School auditorium. The auditorium was being used or was under some remodeling. And so we had to put that on at Argus High School. Funny story from there, Mike Barron's, this one in the middle had a red shirt on, had the lead in that. And one of the nights of the shows, it was a storm coming. And they announced that the police said there is a tornado warning, or watch, whichever one's the worst, in Argus. We needed to go to, the whole audience needed to go to the restrooms, which was a secure area.
Oh, no.
Or the dressing rooms, not the restrooms. So everybody gets up and goes. Forgotten that Mike was back in the dressing room changing clothes. He walked out. Nobody. And his comment was, I thought for sure the rapture had come.
The whole audience.
This is from,
Did you get that?
and I want to put this up, for the sets, this is from Beauty and the Beast when we did it. Obviously the costumes.
Oh, my goodness.
And we have been very, very lucky to work with Cassidy Costume Shop in South Bend, and they have lots of costumes that we use. I got to play a clock, which was a fun role to do. But anyway, go ahead, Joe. This is one of my favorite sets. This was designed again by Brian Mickey. This is when we did Joe's Amazing Technicolor, whatever it's called. And the whole head came up and Pharaoh would come right through the head of Tony. And it was just very impressive. Fun play to do. Some of the other costumes, these are some costumes from My Fair Lady, which are some of my favorite. One in the middle is Jean Williams. I don't know how many of you remember Jean Williams. It's the one black and white one. She passed away. She did for years did our designs on our playbills, and we appreciated it. Parts for about it, we had, and this is from Music Man, a quartet up there, just some things. Now the last picture over there, that happens to be me. Now remember I told you I had to take my pants off, my pants went flying. Well, this is later, this is in pajama game, and I had to take my pants off and happened to have this big heart on my butt. It said Gladys, which was the secretary that I was in love with. Andrea Mallory played that, and it was probably, didn't say a word, And it probably went on for 5 to 10 minutes. And because, again, how things happen, I had the pants on, the suspenders. The guy who was the boss told me I had to take my pants off. He wanted to try on these pajamas. And so once I got dressed, one night at practice, I went to the lawnmower, my suspenders were between my legs. I said, "No." Well, the director said, "Leave it. No, you gotta leave it." So I had to make sure, and we really, we used it, believe me. But we had so much fun with it. Andrea's expressions were wonderful. And the two guys that were talking said, "We could have said anything and nobody would have known it." This is, I said I'd refer back, three different plays we've had dogs, live dogs. The one in Anything Goes was a little, I don't know what it was, a little white thing. It was just a lap dog. No problem at all. This is when we did Annie, and this was Frankie. And I was telling Jeff this story yesterday. Frankie was he was what are they called, therapy dog? I guess a
Yeah.
therapy dog.
Very so.
But anyway, he was just wonderful. I mean, he interacted, but he died about a month after that. We found out, and the owner didn't tell us. She brought him, he was so faithful, but he had a tumor, and they couldn't do anything with it. But he was a wonderful dog, we just fell in love with it. And then we also had a little dog who did Wizard of Oz. And he was a little bit ornerier than Frankie. I was telling Jeff yesterday, I said, and then I got to play the wizard and the wizard before in the trailer when Toto and Dorothy come. And I was sitting at a campfire, and one of the things, he was supposed to take this little doggy treat off of the thing, like I was cooking it up. As soon as I put that thing, he would jump right over the fire. He wouldn't wait. I'll tell you, that was out there, that was it. This is one of my favorites to do, and this was again another challenge. Again, the high school auditorium was not available to us. They were redoing all the seats and carpeting and all, and carpet that's on. So we did, and this is the second time we did Nonsense. Nonsense was the only play that the first time, the only play that was musical I'd never been in, was not in. I ran lights, but I was not in. I told them I was going to try out for Sister Mary Mustache. They said they really didn't think they had a part for me. But when we did Nonsense Mega Musical, we did that, I'll tell you why we chose this. I did get to play a nun. I got to play Sister Julia Child of God, who was the cook that killed all the nuns. It kind of leads to the story. And I did not shave my mustache. But I wanted this up because Andrea Mallory, again, if you've ever seen her in this part, she was so funny and so good and so talented. But this is one that we put on the road. We did 2 shows in Argus. We went from there, did 2 shows in North Judson, went from there, did 2 shows in Greenland, and then finished up with 2 shows in Culver. So we had to design the sets, something that could be moved. That's one reason we went with Nonsense, because it's basically one set. And we had a big truck that we loaded it all in and moved it over, and it was a real challenge, but it was fun to do, you know. When you have challenges, that's when you remember it the most. Just want to pay some tribute to some different people here. This is Jim Moss up here in the corner, great gentleman. This is the first time we did fiddle. Next to him is Art Burke. Art did a lot of metal work for us. He was on stage with us. In fact, when we did Carousel, he made us a carousel. And Jack Campbell collected carousel horses, had a big carousel over there at the thing. he gave us 4 horses to use for it, so we had a true carousel.
Wow.
Brian Lifty, like I said, passed away during COVID, and this is Brian here. This is his wife Becky, who was still involved with players. She directed many, many shows. Glenn Patton, there next to Mike Barron's, again, wonderful in helping. Got some people up there, got John Benedict up there. You see yourself up there, John?
Yeah, long time ago.
Second row, Glenn Patton. Al Sitzma was wonderful, was working with sounds and did all kinds of things with us. My brother Dave sitting there in the front row. I don't know the 2 females. Got Michael Meyer in the back. And I should know the other guy's name, but I don't. I know his wife's name. Okay, Jeff. And also want to point out, and I can't express this enough, is the musicians that have put time into it. Anymore, plays have changed, and we've gone to using canned music, which is bad, but I've seen piano players, and we had Mary Zetta Kenny, Jeff's mother here, Vicki Parade Crossley, Annette Osborne, Betty Martins, and one of our first ones, and I didn't have a very good picture of Ann, but that's Ann Bigley over there. Wonderful people, and they put so many hours in the piano, playing the piano, and they would have the whole score. If you've ever seen a score for something like that, it's tough. But we've had some drummers, we've had different things. But again, what goes into doing a play is very, very challenging. We did not just do plays. This is from some variety shows. This is actually one we called Whole Quarter in the Center Ring. And it was a 2-act variety show that we put together ourselves. And it was this kind of a salute to Cole Porter, which of course was here on the Lake Waxahachie many times. And he grew up in Peru, which is Circus City. So we did a combination of it. As you can see, we've got some swings hanging down from the rafters. And that was the second time we used swings. First time was when our second play, which was Little Mary Sunshine, which Deanna Deary was our lead in it. And again, we had swings in that one. Actually, back to that one for just a second. They also have a thing called playing croquet. They have croquet. Well, they were using Nerf balls. And one of them got hit and went flying in the audience and hit George Miller, who was the junior high elementary principal at that time. And later on in the same play, Rich Baker came out had a tomahawk, a true tomahawk with a rock head to it, and he was swinging at something and it came loose and it went flying. And guess who it went to? George. But he caught it. He didn't get it. But Rich's comment was when it went flying, he was saying, he says, I'm going to beat you with this stick. We are also have gone from there, go ahead, Jeff, to doing some, and you see, back to there, if you notice the tent in the background is a big red thing that we made into look like a tent. Well, we took the same backdrop, scrim we call it, and we made an American flag out of it for one of the variety shows we did, and we finished with some patriotic music, Battle Hymn of the Republic. Many of you probably know Tony Mayfield. Tony Mayfield is here singing to his little daughter, Brooke, when she was little. He was in one of our shows, one of our variety shows, and it was called Daddy's the Little Girl. It's the precious one. We had different variety shows that we put together. And we were featured actually at the Blueberry Festival for about 4 years. We were featured entertainment on Saturday night up there at the high school auditorium in Plymouth. Go ahead, Jeff. These are some of the, and again, pay tribute. Mimi Wyrick, Mimi Cole Wyrick was the one who was director of Vintage Rainbow. Very unique person. I was just thinking last night about her. First time I went to dinner, and she was just unique. First time I went to dinner at her house, they lived in Washington Street. She and her husband Jim at that point. Went to their house for dinner, and she had mashed potatoes came, she set it down, and they were blue. Said, blue mashed potatoes, it's just I just wanted to see what your reaction was. I didn't taste any different. Mike Schwartz was one of the original founders. Mimi, Vicky Durr, who's passed away. Jan Moon Williamson over here, who's the other one, and myself, the 5 adults there. Also a picture of Andrea Mallory there. And like this picture here, I can't believe how dark my hair was. Or how many hairs were there. There were about 4 different plays, 5 different plays. When we did Fiddler twice, and Beth Webster, well, Beth Shively the first time, and Beth Webster the second time. But we got to play full Duck and Teddy in both of them. And that was a thrill to be able to do that. And come up with violin players, play on the roof was kind of challenging too. Some of the other plays we've done, and we've done Sound of Music twice, but we did do Wizard of Oz, challenging things we did, but they're all challenging. They're all fun to do, and the fun of doing them is doing the work to get there. I was telling Jeff, when the curtain opens and you go, you sit and look at what you've done and think, wow, that looks pretty good. And it looks much better from the audience than it does up close. Amy's sitting back there shaking her head. Okay, Jeff. We have gotten to play, we've switched to or we do the Maxicati singers now. And maybe many of you have heard, and this is all stemmed from this, we've gotten to do various shows. This one here, we got to sing a Christmas show in Union Station in Indianapolis 2 years in a row. We did that. And it was thrilling to be able to do that. And this just happens to be a picture that was taken of the group a few years ago. That was taken over at the Cove. One of the things, I put that picture in there. This was from a Christmas show we did, and that was actually in Bremen. But we had 6 guys dressed up doing this song called Rusty Chevrolet that we had so much fun in doing. But there's a steering wheel that we did all kinds of things. We did a Chinese fire drill, and the steering wheel was on the other side. Well, when we came back, we just kind of we switched it to the right side. So now the guy's driving the right side. So all of us picked out had British stuff to put on. So we all of a sudden switched to British accents. So we try to have fun with what we do. I think we're just about finished. This is just, again, part of the picture. This is another picture of the singers. We just had our last Christmas show. We had 24 people in the group, 24 singers. We did not put on a spring show this year, but we're planning, I think we're going to start the 1st of September working on a Christmas show. And I go ahead from there. Not the end. Now, I want to go back to the fact that, I lost my pants in the first one. I had to take off my pants in another one. So, I'm going to do a little flashing here. We're working on another one. I brought lots of different programs up here, all 45 years worth of Mexican players. There's some things of programs you might want to see. Maybe you knew somebody that was in it. There's cast pictures in it. There's also a couple things over here. There's, if you want to know some information about Shrek, there's things you can take with you. And also, if anybody's going to eat at Hacienda on the 17th, if you take one of these, the Mexican players get 20%.
Oh, nice.
So if you are wanting to eat up there, take one of those and take it with you and give it to them, and we'll get some money back. So thank you very much.